Hey friends, so this is Class Notes episode number 33. We made it to a mystical number. Let's get started. So yesterday's class was about more or less the same content than last week, but we've added some. And we started the practice with some silk reeling exercises to warm up, but then, just as last week, we focused on using the circle walking exercise or method in order to warm up and check in with our body. As I mentioned last week, you can use the circle walking exercise or method for many different things. And sometimes, for example, when you don't have much time at hand, you can use the circle walking exercise as a perfect tool to check in with your body and see how much you can load your body, for example, on this given day, or how a certain injury has developed over the past days, or anything like that. So since we started this topic of using a certain method for different purposes last week, we continued with it this week, using again the circle walking method in order to check in with our body as well as warming up. As I said before, usually you would start to walk really slowly. This is what I am doing here and what everybody else is doing, walking really slowly and then moving into the palm changes that you've learned. And because you've practiced those palm changes and movements so many times before, you have a strong reference inside of your body to how that movement pattern can feel and should feel. And whenever you approach this method with the new focus on checking in with your body, you can use these reference points in order to get a good feeling of where you're standing at and what the actual your form on this given day is like. So for example, the day before this class here, I popped my knee quite a bit in jiu-jitsu class. So it was a strong pop, and my right knee, I don't know if it's injured or not, but I'm feeling the musculature and everything is still quite stable, but a pop is a pop, and it was quite loud. So I have to take it a little bit conservative these days. So for me, this exercise here that we introduced last week was specifically interesting because I could now use this circle walking method in order to check in with my knee and see how it actually feels, if it's stable, if I can move it through the common ranges that I usually use. And what you see here again is that I approach the palm change of the snake smooth body palm in a very conservative manner. So I basically don't go into a low stance. I just use maybe half of my range for now in order to check in and see how it feels. And my goal here is that I always would move into an area where I still feel no pain. Okay, the no pain rule is super important. Whatever you do in this circle walking practice here and in your check in and your warm up, you want to move closer to the area where you expect something to be a little bit off the usual. Okay, so for me, starting off with the snake smooth body palm, which is a very challenging movement to your knee and hip mobility, I used a little bit slower motion here, and I'm also using a little bit higher stances and not challenging myself with too much flow, but keeping things rather robotic in order to check in with each and every position before I move into the next position, and then I would continue. So my sensation here for my knee was, it doesn't really feel right, but I seem to be able to use my knee for the full range of motion. It's just that my head is still busy with the pop of yesterday. So the goal for me now would be to reintroduce the full range of motion and do it in a conservative way, never move into pain, but trying to make it to convince my own mind and my own nervous system that these motions are okay and safe to do. So that was the approach. Yeah, and Every person here in class has a different topic. Usually we all carry a lot of everyday tension with us. So every day you move or you practice circle walking, you will have something else to work on. I'm pretty sure. Okay, the good times when we wake up in the morning and everything feels like butter and honey, they are over, right? And so there's every day there's some tiny little thing that bugs you a little bit, and with this kind of exercise, moving through the same patterns that you've practiced so many times before is a very nice warm-up and check-in, and this is super important for me. Okay, so moving now through dragon palm changes, and we took 15 minutes for this exercise. Different palm changes put different stresses on your body. For example, here the tiger, that's a very simple movement for the knee. There's not much bend, but you will see when I practice the swallow palm change, just shortly after that, you will see that I'm very unstable on my right knee, on my right leg, when I have to stand on just that one leg. And this obviously is not a problem of the actual stability of the leg, but my mind telling me, be careful, dude, you just popped your knee yesterday. Okay, so again, this is, I've cut out a lot of this film here to make it a little shorter, but after I noticed that I have an instability standing on one leg in the swallow palm change, I then practiced it for maybe like 4 or 5 repetitions, and each repetition I try to convince my body more and more that it is okay. Here you see it, the first attempt. It is okay. See how now I am standing on that knee which just popped yesterday, and that was the first attempt of the swallow, the first time I'm standing on one leg, the first time I challenge my balance through lifting that front foot here, and it didn't feel good. It's like, oopa, I was like, ooh, surprise. But I also felt that it was not a physical problem in the sense that I didn't feel compromise in my actual muscular stability, but it was a problem here. So I repeated that pattern for 3 to 4 times, and each time I became more confident in moving in this one-legged standing position. Okay, that's the goal of the whole exercise, of using the same patterns to checking in with your body. All right. After that, after the swallow palm, the palm changes are not that challenging anymore for knees and hips. They are more a coordinative challenge, but again, you can then use it for a warm-up, spin around a little bit, have some fun. And yeah, so that's the first part of the class of yesterday night. Some palm changes here, and number 5 here. Then I also went into the practice of palm change number 6, which is the one that we will practice and focus on next. But right now we're still busy with palm change number 5 of the small frame. So here is number 6. Yeah, lovely movement. And by that time, it was like after 10 to 12 minutes, the legs already felt much better. I was a little more confident moving through the full ranges, and that exactly was the goal of the purpose of the whole exercise. And as I said before, we started this method of warming up and checking in with circle walking last week. We continue this week, and next week we are going to change that again for something else. Okay, so, but we also added our new Bagua Zhang posture. This is posture number 4, which is the uplifting spare palm, or the other name was the lion opens its mouth. And here again is the pattern in a simple demonstration only. You step forward and you lead both of your hands to the inside of the circle. And in this position, we can use all the shoulder cues that we've used before, and they are very important again in this exercise here. This front hand here is pointing towards the center of your circle. Oh, wait a second, I skipped it. Let's move to here. No, let's go back. Let's see, I think I skipped too much. Yeah. So the lower hand is pointing towards the center, and the upper hand here is pushing with the center of the palm towards the center. It's an interesting move, and like I said before, the shoulder cues are active, so you want to lift your hand. In this case it's my right hand. You want to lift it without lifting the shoulder. Okay, so hand higher than head without lifting the shoulders from your trapeze muscles here. And therefore, you still need the activation of your latissimus, which is connecting the arm to the center of your body. When we use the Chinese terms, it's connecting it to Mingmen, the place here in your lower back. Okay, this area here. Very interesting because it's very challenging to keep your hand over your head without lifting the shoulder from all this musculature here, the neck area and the trapezius here, and using a little bit of tension in your latissimus in order to keep the arm connected to the Mingmen area, your lower back. Okay, from here we just took we just did, I think, 6 rounds of 1 minute, so we are still working with very little hold time in order to just get used to the change and find the position, change again, find the position, change again, find the positions, and that's the goal for now. We will now, over the next weeks, again start to lengthen the period, the hold time of the posture, but for now the only thing that's important is that you understand the basic alignment, keep your shoulders low, keep walking in a nice fashion, good alignment, good structure, and that's where we start from. Now, the next part of yesterday's class was, again, the linking form of line 1. And since we've practiced the linking form quite a bit over the past 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was 3 now, everybody is now quite coordinated when it comes to how to actually move through the full form without thinking too much about it. So now we can finally use the form for different purposes. And what I demonstrate here is another interesting way to practice linking forms, which is quite close to what other people call interval training. Okay, because you can move through the form in a very intense way. You can take the low stances, you can practice it rather fast, and it's in this method here I'm just demonstrating 3 rounds of it. So I do the full linking form number 1, which takes, let's see, maybe like 30 seconds or 45. I move through the full form, then I take 15 to 30 minutes of a break, and then I do the same thing again, take a short break, and then start the whole thing again. And like you see here, I am wearing a Polar watch, which is one of the ways that I sometimes measure my heart rate and so on. And with this method here, like moving rather quickly through the linking form, I can actually raise my heart rate up to 145 to 155 beats per minute, which is a very good way of starting interval training with your Bagua Zhang forms. Okay, so this was my thing that I practiced yesterday. The other students were still told to focus on getting the full form, walking through the full form without thinking too much about coordination. And now I see that everybody is able to do it, and now we can focus on like things like different movement tempi, different qualities within that linking form, And this is interesting work. It's much more interesting than actually learning the solo patterns. Okay, so you saw, now I had my 15 to 20 seconds rest period, and now I move through the full form again. Let's see how long it takes. So that was at the 15-minute mark here. So I move to one side. Yeah. So Wongo is 20. Now I change directions. So I will end up in like 40 seconds to 45 seconds of activity. Heart rate may be moving up to 140 here, 145. And then, 45 seconds. Almost, 50 seconds in total. Okay, that's how long it took me, 50 seconds. And now I take my break. Let's see how long that takes. Just a few breaths. And heartbeat moving down now. And when I hit 125, which is quite fast with me, I restart. Okay, we can talk about the interval training with linking forms later. It's interesting to do that, and also quite valuable, because that's something that is missing in many internal martial arts practices, the actual conditioning side. It is possible to have or to do interval training and good conditioning with Bagua Zhang and also Xingyi Quan. With Taiji it's a little different, and it's always a good value to do that from time to time. So this is the last round. Again, you saw me taking a break for 15 to 20 seconds. Now this is the last run that I filmed. I did 6 rounds in total, so it's 50 seconds on, 15 to 20 seconds off, 50 seconds on, something like that. Okay, usually when you start doing that, you could take longer breaks. I would say if you finish in 1 minute, you have 1 minute of rest, and then you go for the next minute. I am quite used to the form, so I can move through it quite quickly. So after 15 seconds, I'm done. And then, to me, I watch my heartbeat drop, and when it hits the 125 mark, I restart the movement. Now then, we moved into the first motion of our second Houtian line, Cui Shou Zhang, downward sinking fist. And this form is very simple. Important here is that when you strike forward with your hand, that the arm is slightly sinking. Okay, it's not a horizontal strike, but it's a downward pressing force. Downward pressing, and again, it's important that we think more of pressing with the fist and pulling with the secondary hand than we think of striking forward, because the secondary hand, the one here, my hip, is equally important as the one which is moving forward. It's always important to note that, because usually when people see a fist in front of the body, it's usually about that fist. But in this case, just as within our Jiban Shoufa, it's always about the whole body motion. So you see the secondary hand here, really important. This is the first time that we move through this form with the whole group, and we will talk about the details of this movement pattern more in the upcoming class notes. Okay, so just for now, long step forward, pull back, and then open your whole body and really push from your back, your upper arm and your lower arm. It's a very long and powerful movement. Okay, and after that we just finished with a small exercise, a partner exercise, which will lead us into the applications of Cui Shou Zhang, which is to roll your arms around your partner's arm and change your position from being pressed down and underneath to on top and pressing down. You can use both hands, holding that hand and then rolling over that arm to change the position. This is very close to what you would practice also in Bongquan, in Xingyi Quan, which also oftentimes has a downward pressing force on top of the forward striking force. Okay, so very simple pattern here for Chui Shou. Oh, let's go back for a second. Need to explain that. So the basic pattern that we practice for Chui Shou is a crossing of the hands. Let's see that again. So it's a crossing, extending both hands, you cross, then you grab the upper wrist here, you pull it down, and you strike with this hand towards the ribs of your partner, and you try to pull down the arm of your partner until it touches your own arm. So there should be a connection here between your arm and your partner's arm, and your fist here, that should go to the rib area, not the center of your body. Okay, here is a close-up of this position, and this close-up led me to the next exercise of yesterday's class, and is one topic that I am very let's say I talk about that quite a lot, okay? Because in in traditional martial arts, we strike a lot of air and actually practice with a heavy back or a moving and heavy opponent, and really striking a moving body is very different than practicing strikes into the air or striking a partner which is 100% cooperative to what you want to do. So this shape here needs some help. Yes? Okay, first of all, Chui Shou Zhang, we try to pull down the arm here, we try to find the connection of the two arms, but we want to strike towards the ribs, not to the center. And now look at this posture here of the wrist, and imagine he would pull and strike with full force. You would have a nice problem in your wrist afterwards. Okay, so this problem is something that occurs almost with everyone who practices it, and even if they are aware of a good position of your hand and forearm and the connection, after they did like 5 to 10 repetitions, they're getting a little bit lazy, brain is getting tired, and then the whole thing just wobbles around and becomes really messy. So we need to fix that, and it's a topic that like I said, I'm always after it to change that and to explain what we are actually looking for when it comes to alignment of wrist to forearm. So important for me is, or not for me, important here is that the back of your hand here is in one straight line with your forearm. Okay, there should be no bend up, no downward, also no flexing into this direction or flexing into this direction. It should be in one straight line. Okay, so the force that comes in from your knuckles here, that should be able to move straight into the bones of your forearm, and your body will be able to receive the force without your wrist, usually the weakest part of the chain, getting injured. Okay, it's super important. And I love to do push-up planks on the fist, because it teaches you the correct posture like nothing else. Okay, so here I demonstrate again. You want to hit in such a way to the ribs especially that only the first two knuckles of your fist are striking. So the knuckle of your index finger and the knuckle of your middle finger here, they should be pointing forward and striking towards the ribs. Okay, and if you have like knuckles like me, very bony, then your knuckles are very annoying when you hit that rib area. What usually happens with people when they do that is that they don't close the fist properly, and the knuckles of their fingers stand out, and then they hit in like this. And now you also have a problem, because your fingers are not close enough, they are not tight enough, and you will just damage yourself, and you will probably injure your wrist when you strike like that. So try to move the knuckles of your fist forward. Keep your hand in one straight line with your forearm here, and then practice loading that. That's what we are doing here. We did 3 minutes, or like 3 times 1 minute on the fist, standing in this plank position on our first 2 knuckles only. Took 15 seconds of rest in between, and then we went for another 1 minute standing in the plank position, which is a good, really, really good exercise, and I recommend it to do I recommend it to everyone who's practicing traditional martial arts and pretending to strike someone, but actually only striking air most of the time, to do this exercise, to get a good feel for how the wrist should align with the fist should align with the forearm, and actually load it so it also has the chance to actually strengthen. Okay, so you will see that now. Sometimes, I explain here, sometimes when we strike to the ribs, we use different shapes of our hands. So for example, we pull out this first finger knuckle here of the index finger in order to strike to the ribs, or sometimes it's this one here of the middle finger. But to be honest, if you are not very specialized on striking in such a way, you will just hurt yourself badly. So I recommend for almost everyone to learn how to strike with the first two knuckles and a very close fist. This is, in my opinion, the safest form of striking. And remember, the wrist is the weakest part of the chain, so you have to be to stabilize it. And standing in the plank position on your first two knuckles is a good way to do so. Okay, so let's see how we do it here. I will fast forward a little bit so it's not getting too boring. Okay, so now, can I move this? Yes. So now you can see that I put my fists on the ground, only using the first two knuckles as the surface, and then I move into the plank, keeping my feet close together. If you put them wider, it's a little easier. And then I also rotate my arms out, okay, in an external rotation. So this part of my arm, it's not the armpit, that's this one, it's the elbow pit maybe, you rotate that forward, and this rotation creates more stability in your shoulder joint. We want more stability in the shoulder joint, and we also want to open our shoulder blades, so we are pushing into the body through the first knuckles of our fist. Okay, let's see that again. Now I'm putting on the timer, and here we go. Important, don't let your shoulders drop, don't sink into this position, but press into the ground and open your shoulder blades. That's the position I'm looking for. Okay, and now press into the floor through the first two knuckles and hold for 1 minute. I will fast forward the minute because it's just too boring to see that. Okay, try to not change your position, try to stay there and keep it up, keep it. You will get much stronger really quickly. Takes maybe like 4 weeks, and you will be much stronger, and you will have a much better sensation of a good alignment of your wrist. Okay, so now we take a short break. I think it was 15 to 20 seconds only. First round is always very interesting. Everybody still feels quite nice, but after the second round, everybody starts to shake, and then it starts to get interesting. Now, back on the fists, another minute. I'll fast forward again. One more time, basic points here. First two knuckles only, external rotation of your arm, more stability in your shoulder blade, and push into the floor and open your shoulder blades. And again, taking a short break, and one more time, 1 minute. Okay, so this, in yesterday's class, we just took 3 rounds of that. Next week, we will do 4. Okay, try to follow that. It's an interesting exercise. Let me know what you think and how it felt. And I hope you enjoyed this quite lengthy session of Bagua Zhang class notes. It's almost 30 minutes. See you next week.